to Customer Transformation Live. Buckle up as we tap into transformative conversations, real-world case studies, and innovative solutions that are shaping the future of customer engagement. Your journey to customer transformation starts now. All right, we're back. Welcome to Customer Transformation Live. My name is Chris Hood. I am a digital strategist, and I'm here to talk with Kristin. Welcome to the show.
Thank
Why don't
you.
you?
Yeah, I currently own and operate, manage a digital marketing agency. Started that in 2017 to try to help mid-sized businesses that were established and were like deer in the headlights for digital stuff. Before that, for several decades, I was a revenue coach. So I helped CEOs and entrepreneurs increase their revenue by understanding what their customers wanted to buy from them and how they wanted to buy it. And then before that, my husband and I had an ad agency back in the old days in Silicon Valley. So I started out in tech when I was 17, pre-internet, pre-PCs, and we helped introduce most of the technology that we use today. So I've been in the tech business all this time and selling and marketing and trying to make it easy for customers to buy.
You know, I have to sit there and reflect. One of my classes in college, I decided to go do advertising and an actual typesetting course. And at the time, there was no WordPress. There was no any type of computer with fonts. Like the concept of a font was unimagined at that time. And what we would have to do is we would get a book, and the book had all the typesets, or what today we would call fonts. And we would have to go through and then on a piece of paper, lay out lines and hand draw the way that we wanted the headlines, the text, or whatever to work. I did that for one semester. And at the time, computers were just about to break in. This was around 1990, 1991. And I'm like, I know I can do this with my computer. And I dropped the class and I never went back. But I remember the class so vividly, looking through these books of letters to be able to typeset something by pencil and in order to produce advertisements.
Yep, been there, done that.
Yeah. Now, the next thing you said is where I really want to start. And I think today, I've talked about this before, that consumers today are more empowered than they have ever been before. And you say buyers have changed the way they buy, but sellers have been slow to change the way they sell. Now, what do you mean by that?
Well, there's a gap, and I learned about the gap when I was an agency, but even especially when I was a revenue coach. When I first met with a client, I would sit down and say, okay, what's important to your customers? And they'd give me a list. And then I'd go out and I interview customers. And the list, their version of that list was always different. Sometimes it was completely different. Sometimes it was just prioritized differently. But the things that the buyers cared about, the sellers didn't even realize they thought it was important. And I went through this with several clients. Well, actually, all of them had this problem, but there are some really big success stories of people that were pushing this thing over here, and the customer was interested in that thing over there, and they had to do too much digging. It was too hard for them to find out how this worked. And once they did, they were actually excited about something in this, what was a software program, not even realizing it was there, and it was the most exciting thing to them. So we ended up renaming the company, and the guy ended up selling the company to Microsoft for many millions of dollars and doing very well for himself. But that just, the gap was always there. So I started always interviewing customers before I would work for a client, and I worked out methods, open-ended questions, phone interview because there's no physical stuff involved. It's even better than the Zoom video interviews. And you get to the bottom of what I call their mindset when they set out to buy. And that consists of their desires, their concerns, and their questions. And if you address all of those things in your website and all of your other materials, you're going to make a sale. Your revenue is going to go up, which is why I called myself a revenue coach, because that's what I did. I helped revenues go up.
I'm going to add a fourth one in there, but we're going to come back to it. I just wrote those down. Desires,
Okay.
concerns, and questions. I think those are fabulous. I would love to dive into each one of those. And then, like I said, I'm going to add a fourth one. But I think the other side of the way that we buy that has changed recently is that our buying practices or the way we buy is changing rapidly, right? So your belief system or the way that you engage with the businesses that you want to engage with, well, last year is one way, this year is probably a different way. And by the time we reach Christmas, it might be a completely different way. Now, I think there are some trends that are natural in there, but this rapid pace of the way we want to engage with companies, I think, is a part of the equation.
Well, that's true, obviously. And I've been in tech since tech was, the early days. And what I discovered over the years is the tech changes really fast. And I've been keeping up with it all these years. Uh, but the actual desires and concerns and questions that buyers have doesn't change that fast. Now, there are exceptions like immediate fads, where everybody's suddenly talking about AI or something and they all jump on, or everybody's, a Swifty. And those things go through the marketplace. That's true. But your safest bet is understanding what the customer is trying to get from a product or service like yours, and that doesn't change that much. I mean, I would redo the research a couple months later or 6 months later, and it was all the same. So that's comforting in the sense that technology, yes, changes, and the fact that, for example, chat has been around for years, and but it just caught on. I mean, it's now accepted. It's now something that, I mean, even Amazon has chat. And on one level, Amazon is the easiest to buy from, but on another level, they're not the most customer service friendly people when you need help. But they've kind of incorporated that in. Um, so everybody's expected to have chat now. So, yes, things change, but if you stay on top of your customers and their mindset when they set out to buy, which is even more important than the persona, by the way, um, you're going to be on target more than you are not.
Yeah, I think what you're touching on here is part of the challenges for businesses. The technology may adjust a little bit, but buying behaviors may typically stay the same. However, at some level, they are changing. And if an enterprise just simply says, well, they're still doing the same thing they've always done, and they're still doing it the same way they've always done it,
No, no,
and they
I'm
don't,
yeah,
right? And they
yeah,
don't manage that change,
right.
then they get left behind.
Absolutely 100%. And the competitors come out with things and expectations are set. I mean, I've been using FedEx, or not FedEx, Amazon. I've been using FedEx as an example for years too, but more recently, Amazon, they have figured out 20 or 30 ways when you go to buy something to help you make the decision. They'll show you other products, they'll show you what people said, they'll get questions answered by other customers. I mean, there's this whole thing, your browsing history. When you go into a page when you're buying a product, everything you need to make a decision is there. And I know that I talk in my book about the four types of products and services in the world based on the amount of scrutiny that the person applies to the purchase. But I can tell you that some of the low scrutiny products and services, you can spend 2 or 3 hours on your computer looking for the perfect soap dish. And Amazon and places like that make it possible now. So that's changed.
How much has Amazon altered our expectations in the buying process. I mean, to me, they've revolutionized the way we shop, and that has shifted what our expectations are when we shop with other organizations other than Amazon.
Yeah, no question. And they are still the leader. I mean, nobody even comes close to the number of. I think I was looking recently. There are billions of people every day, 2 billion people coming to their site, and I think Walmart was like half. eBay was maybe a third or something. I don't remember the exact numbers. Somebody can look it up. But they nobody's even come close. And part of the reason for that is they aren't set up for it. This is a systems war that we're always in. You have to build an infrastructure to make this all work. And that was the thing that when Amazon first came on the scene back in the early days, I looked at them, I looked at my husband and said, their whole thing is about the infrastructure. They're setting up systems. And that's what's made them so good. And systems like that, when you have an ERP system and delivery, now they've got their own trucks. I mean, nobody's even come close to where they are. So there is a market leader in that sense of making it easy for the customer. And a lot of people have not even come close to what Amazon has done.
Yeah. Let's touch on these three elements that you've outlined: desires, concerns, and questions. And I'm going to go backwards, and I'm going to go backwards for a particular reason. But let's start with questions. Walk us through, what are the questions that we as buyers have?
It's interesting if you're buying, one of my favorite examples of that is if you're buying something physical that has to fit in a space. Or let's say you're buying a software product that has to work with other software products, has to be compatible. It's shocking how hard it is to find that information. I mean, just even width, depth, height, and so you have to find it in the case of Amazon, somebody is going to answer, "Oh, it's this big. I have this little table that has the USB ports and the stuff built into it, and it has a little lid." The manufacturer never said how big it is inside the box. They only say how big the table is. So I think because manufacturers and sellers don't ask the questions that give them the answers, what are the questions you have? They never answer them.
Hmm.
And that's a really big problem. If how many times have you gone to buy something, you really liked it, but you just couldn't get the question answered? You just said, never mind. If I can't get that go-to thing, that one thing that's going to make the difference, that's the game changer. I need it. You buy from the people that give you the information.
I'm thinking through this, and you're absolutely right. I was looking at string lights for Christmas, and I found a brand that I wanted to buy, and I was just looking for the simple, how long is the string, right? How long is it?
Yeah.
And what's crazy is I
uh,
found the product in two places, exact same product. That sometimes happens.
Yep.
And I went to both of the products, and then in the description somewhere buried, I found a length of the string lights, and then I went over to the other one, and it was a different length. So now I have the exact same product with two different lengths, and I still have no idea what it is. So what did I do? I didn't buy it because I have no idea. And even if you go into the questions and you're asking the other previous buyers, sometimes you're getting accurate. The details of the questions we have also become, I think, increasingly more complex,
I agree.
where it's almost impossible to really answer every possible question. But I agree, we have questions.
Yeah, but the thing about the interviews, the reason that I do these interviews is because after, and by the way, can't do this while you're selling to them. You can only do it after they've bought. And you call existing customers. The goal is to understand, to sort of reverse engineer a successful sale and then produce more sales in quantity. If you interview it, and believe me, it only takes, believe it or not, only takes about 5 to 7 customers of a given type. Like, let's say you're selling a B2B product, there's a CEO, there's a user, there's a purchasing person. So you need 3 types there. Um, You just interview 5 to 7 people. You have this open-ended phone conversation. You let them talk, they answer all your questions. You get bankable information from that, and you really can answer. This is how you answer these questions, and you become the manufacturer that answers it. Like, maybe the people that have the string actually show you a tape measure, and, so that you're convinced that, yes, it is in fact 6 feet long or something.
You've touched on something else in here as you were explaining that, um, customer empathy or just empathy in general. We're not going to dive into this too much, but I was having a conversation with somebody on another podcast and we were talking about empathy. And they were alluding to, like, okay, yeah, we're being empathetic during the sales process, but it's still not working. And I argued, well, you're really not being empathetic. What you're doing is you're listening for keywords so that you can still close a deal.
Yeah.
In the back of your mind, you're not really being empathetic towards that individual. All you're doing is like, okay, I'm trying to position myself in the right way to close this deal. And to your point, a lot of this has to be done after the fact. You have to take that data, go back, think about it, analyze it, and then come up with whatever it is that you want to, the next try, or be able to
I'll
deliver to your customers.
I'll even take that a step further. One of my most successful clients, in the sense that he keeps leveraging, he keeps learning, he keeps figuring out new ways to get revenue. He read my book and drank the Kool-Aid. And one of the things I always talk about is that you don't need salespeople. You need customer service people who love helping the customer, whether they make a sale or not. You can compensate them on the total revenue of the company, but you don't do a commission and all of that. They're completely incented a different way. The customer knows that. And in fact, with this customer, we've also turned those conversations. We have a log of all their chats, and we turn those into social stories. This person came to us with this problem. We figured out how to solve it. Here's what we did. So it's proof of constantly helping the customer, and their revenue has gone through the roof. I mean, they've just, they were doing okay, but now they're like hockey sticking, because they're just making it easy for the customer to buy. It's it's a wonderful thing.
It's fabulous. And it's so basic when you really think about it. And yet, as you know, we see a lot of companies that struggle with this. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Concerns. What are our concerns?
So there is no virgin environment. Okay, there's no virgin buyers. There's by the time you're 11, you've bought. You've seen thousands of commercials, and you're a consumer. And we've been burned, especially with technology and things like that, where you buy a software program, you think it's going to do what you want. I've probably been through 50 different project management programs before we finally found the one that really did what we wanted. You test it, and then you go, oh man, they don't do this one thing. I can't. That's the game changer, the showstopper. Um, so people have been burned, and they've been so burned that you're selling basically in what I call the skepticism swamp. They they really they've heard all the pitches. They just have very specific concerns, and you need to address them. And if you don't, I mean, I remember my husband and I interviewed an interior designer, and all she did was gossip about her clients. And we walked out of there and just looked at each other and said, "No way, are we going to do business with this woman?" She had no idea she lost the sale. And the buyer will not tell you when you're losing the sale. You think you're
Right.
making the sale, but they're not going to give you an opportunity to try to talk them out of it. They're just going to walk away and go back to their computer and keep looking.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and again, I can't, I keep laughing because it's so true. And I recollect in my head like times where, you're focused on yourself. You're not focused on me. You don't really care. You're trying to close the deal. Like I can go find better customer support or somebody who actually cares about what I'm trying to do, a lot easier than dealing with this.
Yeah, you can't fake caring. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's exactly it.
I have this. I'm starting a new book, basically. I think it's going to be a book. It's also going to be a webcast, but it's basically the idea that I'm calling it the three angels of business. I might change the title, but it's love, which is just taking care of people. It is leverage, where if you take care of enough people, you start building momentum. And there's a few other things you can do, like saving money and stuff that gives you leverage to do other things. And logistics. And I don't mean just supply chain stuff, I mean the infrastructure, the systems, the
Yeah.
processes, the methods that you use to support the customer and build your business. And those are the three drivers, in my experience, working with hundreds of CEOs and entrepreneurs and interviewing thousands of customers, that make the business grow and make it work. And we just need to get back to that. We can't fake caring. It
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. How about desires?
They know what they want, and it's very specific. And if you don't know what they want, you're going to be saying all sorts of things, and they're going to be scrolling through it and just be like, nah, 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 okay, never mind, gone. It's
Yeah.
very if you don't, you can't guess. Guessing is very expensive. Guessing is a good way to have the revenue go the other way.
I like that. Guessing is very expensive. And the way I've explained it, and I put this in my book, is if you believe you know what your customers want without asking them what they want, you're going to lose those customers.
Yes, that's exactly right. Good for you. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Sums it up.
Yeah.
And why do we do this? Because of ego. We think we know more than the customers. We think because we know so much about the product and everything that we know what the customer wants. But we're not. We're the minute you put on your seller's hat, you stop thinking like a customer.
I go into organizations all of the time and I sit down with senior level executives and I say, put yourself in the customer's shoes. Now, that's an empathetic statement, but I go, you are a customer. I actually went to speak recently at a big organization and I said, now I think this is a no brainer, but I believe that most of you used your organization's product to get here today, right? And I said, show a sign of hands, and all but one person raised their hand. But I said, here's a great example. You are all customers, right? We go and we go to the store, we go to the grocery store, we gas station, wherever we go, we are a customer. We know what we like, we know what we don't like, we know what experiences. If you went to the grocery store and you went to pay with your debit card and they said, "Oh, sorry, we don't take debit cards anymore," you'd be like, "What?" Because your expectation is set that I can walk in and pay with my debit card. Like, put yourself in these shoes, and too often, as you just outlined, these organizations just forget that. They're like, what is the experience we want to impose on our customers, as opposed to the experience that we feel that we would enjoy just as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the fourth one, and I think the fourth one is along the lines of desires, but I'm actually also writing another book. I'm halfway in almost, um, and it's a focus on aspirations. Now, I have a belief, and this is at least the hypothesis in my book, and we can definitely see this from a marketing. Like, most of marketing is you are going to target those aspirations, like be more successful, be this, be that. But I think deeper is that we have these aspirations personally that are actually driving the way that we purchase.
I
And it
agree.
may not always be like, oh, I want to be in the best car and wear the best clothes. But as we as individuals have our personal aspirations and they intersect with other people in a relational type of perspective, we get into this unique scenario how those may influence what we buy and how we buy. What
I
do you think?
agree. Yeah. It's an interesting thought. I think I would put that under desires in a sense, but it's a deeper, more purpose-filled life kind of desire where you're there's certain things that you really care about. Like my nephew's father, my brother, drives a motorcycle. The nephew won't because he's got young kids now and he doesn't want to be the dead dad, you know? That's a deep aspiration from him. He's very concerned about being a good father. So yeah, there are things uh, I mean just in terms of ethics, you know, I my goal is to always be nice to everybody no matter what they're doing, and that drives, you know, how I react and how I buy what I buy. If something seems sort of shady, I'm not interested. So yeah, that's a very good point. I have to think about that.
I
Thank you
think on
for
the
that.
other side, I'll give you another one to think about here, is in your 3 L's, you get to the logistics. And if an organization is attempting to build the infrastructure to meet the needs and thus aspirations of their consumers, then they may have an aspiration on how that infrastructure should be built,
Yes, that's
right?
true.
So, hey, I want to reach a global audience, or hey, I want to be more, economically savvy, or I want to be able to reach consumers where they are. There's any number of things in there where how you structure that infrastructure, there's a business aspiration that drives towards that consumer aspiration.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, yeah. Those are very interesting thoughts. You're a
I,
smart guy.
I'm in the middle of writing this, so this is a brainstorming session for me. I'm
Yeah.
bouncing ideas off of you just to
No, that's
see if it
good.
works.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. I like
Um,
that. That's a very good point, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I'll give you credit when I talk about logistics in my book, because I do think those things are often at war.
oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We see that today, right now, in a lot of businesses where you can tell what they want to do versus what their consumers want is completely different.
Well, I mean, insurance companies are a great example of that. We all pay insurance expecting to get paid, and then their whole thing is not to pay, to try to not do it, you know, in spite of all their commercials and everything. When it comes down to it, they'll be like, "Nope, there's an exception. There's a little loophole, and we don't want you to give you that money because of that little
Yeah,
loophole."
that's so true. I'm dealing with an insurance agent right now, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Ah, man. Wow. Well, share a little bit more about your book. Would love to learn more.
It's a prescription book. People ask me why I wrote the book, and the reason is I just got so tired of being the voice in the wilderness talking about actually asking your customer what they want, like you said earlier. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to lay it out. So I give you exact instructions on how to conduct the interviews and, you know, the tools you use, the questions you ask. I give away all my secrets because I don't want to be the only one doing this. I want everybody to just do this very simple thing, get them on the phone, make an appointment, and then ask these open-ended questions, and then you end up with this bankable information. You create a summary report, then you dump the Gatorade over your management head and say, here's the truth. And the other thing that's wonderful about this, by the way, is marketers who do it suddenly have power they've never had before because now they're an expert on the customer. And all of those subjective conversations in the marketing meetings where, oh, we always did it this way, so we're going to do it this way again, or at my last company we did this and it worked out. They don't have any way to counter that, especially if it's a high up person the CEO respects. So now they've got all this data and they can say, no, no, wait a minute, that's not what they said. They all said this. So I've changed the lives of a lot of marketing people who actually drank the Kool-Aid, went out and interviewed, and came back and said, wow, now I know.
Marketing is an interesting beast. I've been in marketing for a while, but I guess the last question for you to touch on this is, at what point does the rest of the organization matter in that buying process? We typically think, well, that's marketing's responsibility. Marketing has to go and figure out what the customer wants. Marketing has to do the research. But there's other teams that I think are equally as important.
I can sum this up real quick for you. I have this famous saying that I've been saying for years, and people quote me on it a lot. And that is, branding is the promise that you make. Your brand is the promise that you keep. And you keep that brand, that truth out there by your products, your people, your processes, your policies, and your passion. Most companies get those right except for the processes, assuming that there's not a jerk at the top, because if there's a jerk at the top, the whole thing is, they don't care about the customer.
Yeah.
But they get the rest, and that they always blow the processes. So it's the manufacturing, it's the thing doesn't fall apart after you've had it for a year. I mean, it's all that stuff that people put in reviews and say, I tried it and it was awful. That's the promise that you're breaking, and it's going to cost you revenue.
Yeah. I couldn't summarize it better myself. I love it. Well, thank you, Kristin. I appreciate your time and your perspective, and definitely go grab a copy of the book. It's right there on your screen. Get a phone out and click over to Amazon. You can find it there. And thank you again for your time and your insights.
Same here. Thank you very much.
And we will be back again next week to do this again with another fabulous guest on Customer Transformation Live. I appreciate it. Everybody who's watching, we'll be back next week. Thanks, everyone.